Welcome back to Suladan Plays Subnautica. Actually, this is going to be a slightly different thing, as I'm actually, well, this is the finale of Subnautica, firstly. Secondly, I've done about all there is to actually do in the game, so this episode is more of an attempt at doing more of a thorough review of the game in retrospect. I knew I'd find that word. The game is actually loading, and while it's loading, that's one thing I would like to mention. This is one of two games I've played recently that has this loading issue. Subnautica can take anywhere from 2 to 5 to 7 minutes to load. Like, once you get into the game menu and hit load save game. I understand there's a lot of things that have got to be loaded, but for the most part, the game world is not voxel based. It's not like it has to remember where I have dug. And it seems like most of the deposits and everything spawn fresh as I play. At one point, there was a bunch of quartz right near where I saved. I closed the game, went and ate with the intent to come back and harvest the quartz. I loaded up the game and it was all gone. It just slowly, new quartz deposits popped up as I played, after that point. So the game really doesn't have to track the position of every creature, not counting aquarium creatures, of every wild creature, of every deposit, of every mining thing, of every piece of scrap metal. Those things it all remembers. I mean, it doesn't remember, it refreshes, it makes new. There are a number of things it does have to remember, of course, like plot-related things you've picked up, PDAs, etc. But it's funny to me that it takes that much time to load.
All systems are go for liftoff.
Well, too bad, we ain't lifting off. That's another thing, I'm staying here. I don't like Altera, I don't trust Altera. They said I couldn't land until I paid them like 1 trillion credits, so I'm staying here. But yeah, No Man's Sky is another one that has, like, kind of... Oh, there it is. No? There it is. Has just, like, offensively long load time. And that one is more understandable. It does have some problems, don't get me wrong, but it's a fun game. But every time you use a portal to, like, switch between bases, you've got a, 30-second to a minute load screen, and it's just kind of a little annoying. Especially when it comes to your bases, it'd be nice if you could just, like, load them all and then flick between them. 5-10 second loads would be nice. But that is neither here nor there. That is a different game and not the point of this. Also, hopefully the sound quality has been... Okay, now you managed to creep me out a little bit. Thank you. In the Neptune's Quest assortment and this one, the sound quality for the game has hopefully been improved and you can hear more of the range of sounds because I took the sound compressor off. Just a slight side tangent. But anyway, more on to the point of Subnautica. The visual aesthetics of the game are gorgeous. The environments are varied. There's just so much. All these little details, bubbles and, water currents. The textures are great, the visuals are great, the animations, I do notice this happens sometimes, like when you first start the game it does that, and then eventually it'll start doing the actual animation. Don't know why that is. There's a number of, like, little visual bugs like that. The game is really bad about collision detection, not in terms of the entities themselves. Okay, sometimes, but like half of their wing will just clip through the building and it's spooky. Also the Cyclops, like you drive through the kelp, it just clips straight through. The little details like that, and the water boiling effect that's only supposed to happen underwater, or the bubbles when you use the Prawn Suits grapple claw outside of water. Little polishing details that I feel like they should have come back and finished when they finished the game. Here's another one. My legs do not do any... I've seen so many games that do this, but when you rotate, you see the character pick up its feet and, try to do the walk animation to fix it. Little polishing final details that you would normally have made a final pass on when completing your game to, I lack a better word, but polish. To put finesse and polish on them. You know, those are little details that stand out to me as kind of the more I play, the more I notice them, up to a point. Another thing is it would have been nice to have more than 5 quick buttons, but that is neither here nor there. That's a mechanical issue. As far as the visual environment, the game is beautiful. I love the way that the lore is just scattered through PDAs, the fact that some of the like environmental placement of things tells a story alongside the PDAs, like that one crab squid that hovers around the Degassi settlement that it took me a while to figure out why it was hovering there. It played into the lore. Some of the skeletal remain placements, things like that. Environmental storytelling is a very beautiful and underused aspect of game design, and I love it when I see it. You know what? We're gonna go stand in the observatory. That's a pretty place. Also, the keep calm poster is down here now. Reminds the cuddlefish to always keep calm. Clipping and finesse and lack of polish on a number of the visual things does concern me, though, like that. The varied creatures in the game are another thing that is really quite beautiful. Now, there are a few places where it'd be nice to have a little more variety, like, you know, we've got 3 different manta ray types. You've got the gel ray, the ghost ray, and then the magma ray. They do all look very different, though. Aside from their general ray shaping, each one is unique. I like that they're each unique and that they're not just reskins of one another. It's not just, oh, this one's blue, that one's red. I haven't floated around the magma rays as much to give an in-depth view there, but they're not as translucent as these. So, you know, I'll give it that. I would like to have seen a wider variety of Leviathans, though. The Reaper Leviathan and Ghost Leviathan, they're both just serpentine. And I get that that's somewhat of a Leviathanish thing, but their exterior model is very distinct and unique, but I would love to see more unique anatomy, and in terms of the creature's AI, more variety. A lot of the Leviathans, not counting, you know, I'm speaking specifically when you're in the Cyclops, because that's mainly when you're going to come across Leviathan, is they just run into you once and float away, or they run into you, circle back, run into you, circle back, run into you. I get, you know, you do have to have some creatures that do that, but I'd love to have seen more variety, and I'll get into a deeper view of the creature AI when I get to the, like, gameplay section of the review. But just from a visual stance, the array of creatures is very visually pleasing. They have wonderful animations, and I love, you know, all their unique and distinct appearances, behaviors, and their sounds. That is one place where this game really shines, is in the aquatic sound design. Hello, Cuddles. Just the array of sounds, and thank you for making my point for me. And general things that happen around you as you're exploring. The cuttlefish is too distracting. The sounds that the various Leviathans make, just the ambient sounds of the environment, the deep rumbling sounds, it's just really penetrating, and it really adds to the sense of isolation and depth of the ocean. Thank you again for clipping through. The music I can't say as much about because, you know, I've got the music turned down pretty well because I like the environmental sound in games like this. So, like, I put the music volume down. I had that at 25. Why are you off of around them? There you go. But yeah, I like the ambient sound to be higher. So most of my view is on the ambient and creature sounds. The voice design is also nice. I like that each of the ships has a different voice. That is neat. As well as the array of different voice lines that you can get from each of the vehicles. Now, in terms of character control, you know, the character moves very well. They've got a very, very fluid control scheme. You know, very nice movement. They swim well, they handle well, their movements put you where you want them to be, it's precise. There's just that little bit of drift that reminds me that I'm in water. The array of tools is nice. Again, it'd be nice to have more than 5 slots, but, you know, that's just me. They probably wanted it to be right there where you could reach it without leaving the movement controls. And I like that you can press E to just put the tools away. A lot of games don't do that. It's one problem I'm having in No Man's Sky is I don't like that he puts the multi-tool away, and then there's not a button to bring it back out. The number of times I've blown myself up with a plasma grenade just because I right-clicked to try to bring my tool back out, or that the firing delay caused by you having to wait on him to pull the tool out caused me to miss or blow up my feet, which again killed me. Different game. I just like that feature that, you know, we can pull out our tool and put it away on demand without having to fire it. I mean, you cannot fire it. It literally puts it away. So yeah, that's neat. As for the story progression, I like this game's, the way it approaches the survival concept, tying it in with a story. I like the way that the gameplay changes and develops over time. When you first start out the game, you're scrambling to get enough food, water, find data scraps, get blueprints, build things, you know, to all your tools and such. It doesn't force you into making a base. You eventually, you know, I made a little base for my own convenience and for storage, but it leaves you very free to do what you want while slowly progressing. And on that note, it's nice that the Seamoth is the first of your vehicles. It's quick, it's nimble, it's small. It can move in any direction you want it to. And it's got an array of different upgrades ranging from utility to defense to power, you know, the solar charger. Never actually used the solar charger, but it's neat to have. Like, combining that with the sonar would be a very interesting combination. While on the topic of, well, I'll save that topic. I do want to do a deeper view on the vehicles and their pros and cons and differences and whatnot, but I'm going to save that, and I'm going to put the Seamoth away. But since the first part of the game you're mainly exploring to try to find new technology, new blueprints, find resources, a quick, nimble vehicle is exactly what you need. Especially since it can be so, you know, varied in what you do with it. Oh, only one of these rooms has the upgrade station. Okay. It does its job very well for that phase of the gameplay. Now, for those players that push to get a prawn suit during that first part of the game, one of the main complaints they have is it's slow and clunky. And yeah, the prawn suit is a little bit slow, and I'll get into that later, but it's not the vehicle you're expected to be using at that point when you need to be able to get around in that way. The Seamoth is more of that style of vehicle. They're distracting, okay? While you're scavenging, you're picking up all these, you know, the signals for the various escape pods and other things. I do really like the PDA system, the data bank, all the different, you know, randomness. The radio occasionally giving you insight on where a life pod is, or in some cases, not being able to give it to you and saying, you know, here's a picture and here's information, go find it. It's a little bit like a treasure hunt. Now, some of them are a pain to find. Partly to do with the game's low render distance. Now, in terms of immersion, it didn't bother me, but I noticed it. If I was completely focused on immersion, it would be kind of immersion breaking that while you're while you're swimming along, you're seeing stuff poof into existence. Even landscape is just not there, and then boop, it's there, or it's not there, and then oh, low res version, oh, higher res version. Normally what you would do is you'd have, in game design, a far out draw distance, and then have fog further in, so the player can't see it, but that stuff's popping into existence outside their field of vision. Superman 64 is an example of that gone wrong, where the game, they introduced fog that was so close that it just it kind of ruined the experience for a lot of people. I didn't play it myself, I just know about it. Because the system's render distance just had to be so low that it wouldn't let Flight show you things in the distance like you wanted it to. I believe they played it off as being a kryptonite fog that he couldn't see through or something to that effect. So it was neat that they at least tried to, you know, play it into the game's design, or at least tried to play it into the game's lore. I mean, they didn't just hand wave it. But yeah, the rendering bit is at times problematic.
Stabilizing.
What's in here that's new? Oh, each of the Neptune pieces. Oh, I didn't know I could have looked at them from there. Well, that made the sticky note a little redundant. I found the rendering to be slightly a problem, and there's a couple of instances where it just failed to render an area. You know, you saw one of those. The other one didn't happen on camera. There's that little round piece right there on the... I thought it may have been the teleporter, but it's not. The portal's in there. There's a little... Anyway, I feel like the game's rendering could have been looked at a little better in instances such as that. One major problem I came across a lot: resource management. Now, I know you can build as many shelves as you want, but here's a problem. Okay, tons of titanium, and you've even given me the ability to combine 10 titanium into a titanium bar. Ingot. Why did you not give me the ability to then turn that titanium ingot back into 10 titanium? Like, being able to condense the ore into a storage-friendly medium, like, ooh, here's 10 copper ore, 1 copper ingot, turn that back into ore, back and forth, and back and forth. And yes, I know that, you know, ore is less pure than ingots, and you've got, you know, but it's fabricator. If it can take the bones out of a fish, it can reintroduce the impurities back into the ore. You know, even if I have to just bring a rock in here and have it combine the rock and the ingot into, you know, the ore. Being able to combine various resources back down into a compressed form would have been very useful for storage. You know, glass brick, the titanium, the gemstones, magnetite, all the different ores, being able to combine them. Alternatively, having a compartment you could build on your station that's just like an ore storage, where you could, you know, dump all that stuff in and have it in a, you know, easy to get to, easy to read. Like, you pull it up and it just says titanium ore 10, copper ore 5, and, you know, you just pop them out from there. It would have been very helpful for, you know, inventory management, user friendliness, and just general base building. Because otherwise you often just end up with, like, why can't I just turn these into that and have it take up less spaces? It's not breaking the game in terms of me being able to carry it around, because I still require a fabricator to, you know, shift between those two forms. I found that to be a little bothersome. Also noticed later that the bulbo tree actually has water coming out of the bulging roots, and thought that was neat. Now, as for the creature's AI, I've kind of mentioned this, and some of it will be tied more to the vehicle description, but especially those interacting with the Cyclops. I don't like that all of it seems to break down to creature ram Cyclops. Creature bump into Cyclops. Okay, why not have the Ampiel try to, like, encircle coil around it and ensnare it? Why not have the crab squid actually try to latch onto it and, like, chew on it? Why not have the ghost Leviathan wrap around it? Like, there's so many different interactions you could have with the Cyclops and the creatures in the environment. Like, I know that sometimes I've had the dragon Leviathan hit it with one of its arms, and it actually turned the entire Cyclops sideways, and then it slowly drifted back upright. Like, more interactions like that would be nice. The ability for each of these compartments to be individually damaged and flood and require me to close them off or pump the water out. from what I've read, there was once a time where that was partially functional, where like the different areas would flood and it would make the Cyclops start to sink or to, you know, to tilt back. I know there's fancy terms for this, but I don't have them. I feel like there may have been intended to be a lot more functionality in the Cyclops that was stripped away. Don't know. Didn't play the game through its development. Now, before I get too deep into the vehicles, I do need to make one further tangent off onto the subject of the crater's edge, aka the edge of the game map. The entire game takes place on top of a dormant volcano. So you're in this kind of roundish, it's not exactly round, but you can see the shape here. You know, that's the top of a volcano, then you have a sheer cliff on all sides, and then just emptiness. Now, this has to be done for, you know, like map reasons. It's not an infinite map. The thing that bothers me, okay, you've already used ghost leviathans in your game world. Like there's one swimming around off in that direction. I call him my noisy neighbor. I don't like that driving off the crater's edge just spawns 1 to 3 ghost leviathans, depending on how long you stay out there, who will mercilessly ram into you until you're destroyed. I feel like so much more could have been done with that. Now, to me, I would have loved to. It says that, you know, off the crater's edge, you've either got life forms in the Leviathan range or microscopic range. Go further than that. Don't stop with just Leviathans. Have something out there that's so massive, the whole thing isn't even really rendered. Like, maybe the player goes off the crater's edge and down in the depths they see this little glow. They go towards it, they follow it, they go down, you know, technically below where the game map is, or maybe almost to the Cyclops' crush depth. So it's right short of the fully upgraded Cyclops' crush depth. You see this glowing orb. Now, as you get near it, you see it's attached to something. And then you just see teeth. Like a massive anglerfish or something of that description that just swallows the Cyclops. Game over. Something so large that you don't even get to see it to appreciate its full form. You just get to see a part of it. The person's imagination will fill in the gaps. It's partly why the sound design is so important in horror games, and in, you know, a game like this where exploration is the drive. It feeds on that fear and mystery. Another example would just be to have have the visibility be lower in the crater's edge, kind of like lava castles, so, you know, you can have something render closer without seeing that it's being rendered. You know, have tentacles just start, you know, coming out from the darkness. I don't know how to better word it, but have some type of, some mysterious kraken that the tendrils just come out, and if they catch you, you just get the animation of them ensnaring the Cyclops and crush. You could have a variety of things that quote-unquote could happen, but these things are on such a massive scale as to make the Leviathan creatures look puny. Like the ghost Leviathans then become the small fish in the big pond. You'd have an array of these massive, they wouldn't even be fully rendered. Like I said, not even fully designed. They're just playing on the unknown. Just massive tentacles that then every player is going to picture a different thing attached to that. You know, somebody may picture Cthulhu attached to it. Another may see it as being, you know, part of a giant kraken. The thing that hunts the ghost leviathans. Or I think they're called ghost leviathans. I forgot. Indigenous life forms, fauna, carnivore. Leviathans. Yeah, ghost leviathans. You know, the thing that, these are the peepers to them. That's the food. You know, the ghost leviathans are the food to these things. Just having something that could play into it that would send the player scrambling back. You know, if they get away from it, great. It's not even scannable. It's meant to just play on that mystery, that primal fear that I feel like the ghost leviathans out there just don't really tie into well. Now, if that was the only place you ever saw ghost leviathans, maybe. But we've got Ghost Leviathans and Ghost Leviathan juveniles just roaming around in the game's area itself. They're not really roaming, they spawn and then they move like from an area around that spawn point. I would love to have seen a deeper ecology on this game where the different creatures like roamed and moved areas, like overfishing in one area could cause another one to move in, but that gets into coding complexity that the game's just not doing. But I feel like so much more could have been done with the Crater's Edge. Just so much more depth and fear and mystery. With all of that aside, I'm gonna go ahead and get a quick snick snack. Why won't you cut faster? There we go. The vehicles. I've already mentioned player movement, and technically that would have kind of tied in with this. But for my little review of the different vehicles and their movements, I'm going to need to explain to you another game that I've played. It's a game series made by Egosoft. It's the X series. You've got X Beyond the Frontier, X2, X3, 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 X4, and X Rebirth. I don't remember where 4... I've not played 4 in Rebirth. I think there's an X4. And the reason there's multiple X3s is kind of neither here nor there, but basically they're expansions. But they're separate games. But they're expansions. But they're separate games. There's an X3, I think X3, yeah, X2 Threat, X3 Reunion, X3 Terran Conflict, X3 Albion Prelude, then X4, or X Rebirth, then X4. That's not important for this, so ignore all that information. They're very fun games. They're a space simulator with 100 and something different sectors of space, all with, depending on the game, a real working economy where you can hunt pirates, steal ships, work for the law enforcement, attack the law enforcement, attack the stations that are there, build new stations, run the economy, ruin the economy, do all sorts of things. It's very open world, very sandboxish. But my point here is that it has a wide variety of ships that are each broken down into different categories based off what type of ship they are. Now in this case, I'm going to forego the technical titles. Like, there's the M5, the M4, the M3, the M2, the M1, and all that, and that doesn't tell you much. So I'm going to use the ship's actual class names. The Scout and Interceptor class are most like the Seamoth. They're quick, they're nimble, they're lightly armored, and lightly armed. The Interceptor is slightly slower but stronger than the Scout ships. But for our purposes, the Seamoth is a Scout. Now its stats would be closer to what an Interceptor class ship would be in X, but Scout fills the role of Seamoth because its purpose is exploration. The purpose of the Seamoth is to be quick, small, and nimble to allow the player to get around the map to explore. To get places, where they couldn't swim themselves without with their oxygen supply as it is. So its purpose is fulfilled by the array of utilities that it provides. The sonar, the zap-zap, you can load it down with cargo containers, you can put the solar thing on it. I don't remember what the other upgrades are, but bear with me, I'm not going through all of them. The Seamoth is, from what I have read, kind of the fan favorite of the ships for its quick and maneuverable stance. And a lot of players expected each successive vehicle to be faster and, more maneuverable. So they were disappointed with the Prawn Suit and the Cyclops. Now, I'm going to get into them in a minute. But for now, for me, the Seamoth fulfills its role very well. It's quick, it's nimble, I can move sideways, up, down, left, right, I can spin around, I can fly backwards, I can fly sideways, I can move in any direction, and I generally have all the utilities that I need for it to fulfill the role of a scout ship. While it is also customizable and can fill, other roles, like I could make it a mini cargo hauler with the little cargo doodads. To me, I think the Seamoth fills its role as well as it could. I mean, I'd give it a 10 out of 10 for a scout ship. Scout, interceptor, you know, light transport vehicle, whatever you want to call it. Now, the Prawn, there's not technically an exact analog to this in the X Games, since this is a, you know, a mobile mech walker thing. The X Games didn't really ever get around to my knowledge, anything in X Rebirth or X4 notwithstanding, they never got around to planet-side exploration. It's one of the things that I think No Man's Sky did so much, that if you combined the X Games and No Man's Sky together, you would have something truly beautiful. With some of the Cyclops' like actual control thrown in, because the X Games capital ships lack some of that. But the Prawn Suits' purpose is to be basically for mining, or to offer a, you know, a kind of an armored mech suit for you to roam around in. Now, my problems with it: it is slow. If not for the grappling hook's ability for me to grab and kind of pseudo sprint with it, I wouldn't really like the Prawn Suit very much. I feel like having to rely on what may or may not be an exploit is a little touchy. I think the Prawn Suit should have had a sprint function. Even if it used a bit of power for him to, you know, for it to sprint. We've already shown that, you know, it works, it sounds okay, it looks okay. I don't really have enough room to do it here, but you've seen me do it before enough times. I would also have loved to seen the Prawn Suit have a little more finesse with its armatures. Like the fact that I have to get out of the ship and put the regular arm back on so that I can pick up items instead of being able to, you know, pick it up with the grapple or just drill it and have it add it to my inventory. A little on that. Even if there was the ability just to have a little, you know, a third manipulator arm just dedicated to grabbing and picking up small items. Even if it had some sort of limitation, like it can't pick up the big heavy items. That's one of the things people complained about with the Prawn Suit's propulsion arm, is that it can't, you know, like my propulsion gun, I can go, you know, grab it, and boom, put it in my inventory. Can't do that with the Prawn Suit's arm, which seems a little weird. It seems like the arm should have been a little more multifunction, since you can't switch between them without getting out of the ship, to the point of being able to pick things up. You know, the drill already can be used as a defense tool and a mining tool, but it just can't pick stuff up. And then the grapple just does grapple. I mean, you can grab fish with it. I mean, you won't put them in your inventory, but it'll usually kill them. You can grab bigger fish with it, and then just kind of be dragged along with them. As for the upgrades, it's got a nice variety of upgrades, but I would have loved to have seen maybe some modular, you know, different legs that could have been made. Maybe different, just some creative customization, like legs that can run faster but can't jump as high. One with more cargo space but less armor. One with more armor but less cargo space. I love the ability to fully customize things, so naturally I gravitate towards that. The mechs in Starbound are a good example, where you can put different arms, legs, thrusters, body, you know, you can fully customize the thing. And I do understand that takes a lot more balancing time, more models to be made, etc. But taken as what it's made to be, kind of a mech walker for you to mine with, it does its job very well, but its lack of a sprint function I'd call it a 7 out of 10, maybe. I really like the Prawn Suit. Like, thematically, it does its job well, and it's interesting, but the lack of a sprint kind of makes it meh. If taken without the ability to grapple slingshot. With grapple slingshot, it works fine, but again, I feel like that's kind of an exploit, and it's forcing me to use an arm slot for that when I could have used it for something else. Now the Cyclops. This thing is my favorite. Now it has its shortcomings, I will openly admit. But first thing I want to say, The fact that you steer it with the keyboard while being able to look around. I love this. More ships need to do this. No Man's Sky doesn't. The X games don't. What the X games do is you can reach over and use the number key to kind of look around, but it serves no function. But the Cyclops actually has buttons and things I can look at and do. You know, I like that I can look around and do stuff. Its cameras are just worlds ahead of what the turret cameras in the X games are, in that I can look around. I have, you know, access to lights, which in X wouldn't have been as important. You know, it's in space. Everything's pretty visible. But the ability to flick through the cameras, the little compass thing that tells me, you know, where I'm aiming the camera, it's just so much more user-friendly than I would have ever expected. And in the X games, especially when you get to the larger ships like capital ships, carrier ships, destroyers, you've got a camera on every side of the ship. Some of them with attached turrets, especially in the case of like destroyers. And the ability to flick between them is very nice. There's a little bit of a frame rate drop for some reason happening right now when I switch between it, but usually there's not. It's very fluid. Also, having the camera's name is very useful. The X games didn't really do that, as far as I know. But I really enjoy the cameras, and the fact that I can get to them by pressing a physical, like tactile, look over and push the button instead of hitting a key command is really nice. I love the ability to, you know, turn the engine on and off. Things like this for me to fiddle with. I get fidgety and I love to fiddle with things. The way it moves. Okay, now I have an unpopular opinion here in that I think the Cyclops maneuvers very well. Now bear with me and I will explain why. Having played the X games, this thing steers like what is called a Corvette class ship. Now, not a Corvette like a car. What it means is an escort ship. It is a medium-sized vessel. If the escort is this big, the fighters are these, you know, smaller things, and the capital ships are this big. So it's halfway between a fighter and a capital ship. It is an escort class ship that has a scout that can dock to it, like the Cyclops, that is used for generally escort missions. I use it as a heavy fighter myself, but they steer slow and they can be a pain to use as a fighter because they steer about like this. You want slow, try a destroyer that, you know, I'll slow down the footage a bit to show you what the, you know, destroyers steer like, but these are not designed to be heavily, highly maneuverable things. They're meant to steer slowly. Now, I would have loved a button that I could push that would change it between steering and the ability to actually move. Like sometimes you just want to kind of slide sideways. And given the space technology here, you know, it could have been done. Could have just, you know, put a little button there that switches between rotate and strafe. I don't know what better to call it. All the ships in the X games can strafe because they have visual little thrusters that go to move them around. My problem with it is while I love the ability to strafe, it makes it difficult to use the, you know, like keyboard to turn and steer and all, and a lot of the ships steer too fast to use the keyboard. So they use mouse look to steer the ships, which means that, you know, you can't mouse look to steer and to look around. So, yeah. In capital ships, I think this would have worked better. I adore the way this looks, the way that there's actually a little hologram. Instead of it just being a part of my game's heads-up display, it feels like part of the ship. And the ability for me to, you know, walk away from the controls and walk around. This is something the X games never did. Even in, to my knowledge, again, I'm only going as far as, like, Albion Prelude. But the ability in your destroyer to, you know, walk around and look at different stations and do things. I know it's not a multiplayer game, and, you know, they say, well, there's only one player flying this thing, so what would the point in that be? It's immersive. One place that the Cyclops fails, I've mentioned this again, is this thing is designed to be run by 3 people. I can't do anything, like, you're telling me one person's job is just to turn the lights on and off. No, this is a navigator's console. Like, let me pull up a topographical map and do things. They're pretty decals, and that's a picture frame I put up there. But this should have been something I could functionally park the Cyclops, sit here, hit a button, sonar ping goes off. It propagates a hologram of the topography of the area that I can then use to look around. Maybe have a weaker version of the scanner room that I can install that would drain power. Again, power has to be a limiting factor. But that could show me where certain things are. Like, let's say a Reaper Leviathan attacks, and I have to... Oh, that's the background music. I was saying that sound was getting louder. You know, I jam it into silent, rig for silent running, and then I come over here, you know, even if I shut down the engines, I come over here, I'm on the fence about whether to shut the engines off or not, because then how would this be powered? But bear with me. Then I'd come over here and I'd send out a sonar pulse. I'd risk attracting its attention, but then I would get the lay of the land, so to speak. It would show me... I'm trying to see what that is. It would show me where the creature is, where my escape routes are, because it would be showing me the topography. And then from there I could get back over here and make a decision. But as it is, all the Reaper does is ram me and float off, or ram me a few times and try to kill me, but there's not a deeper level of interaction going on. I would like to be able to, you know, panic, go into silent running, come over here, try to plot out what I'm going to do. You know, come over here on this one, and instead of just one button, show me where the fire's at and have me push, you know, push a button, you know, push the hologram, seal off that specific room. Likewise, this is a big missed opportunity. The fact that these rooms don't individually flood and, you know, me have to shut the bulkheads. I would love for damage to have a wider array of effects, like, you know, that impact damaged my my cameras. I lost cameras, or I lost lighting. You know, such and such system is shorted out. Your propeller has been damaged, so now you can't drive as fast, or you make more noise. So many different things, and I'm just spitballing. I know some of the ideas are probably bad, but there's such a variety of things that could have been done. You know, as well as having modular room design where I could pick and do different things with the rooms. And I know they kind of afforded that with the ability to build, but, you know, maybe you've got a Cyclops that could sacrifice something but have the ability to carry both vehicles. You know, maybe you give up the decoys, or have a Cyclops with torpedo launchers. I don't know. I just would love more customization. More options, more things to do. I love the size of the Cyclops. Like, this thing is tiny compared to capital ships. And it steers smooth as butter compared to capital ships, especially when you take into account the different engine speeds. Like, one thing you can do, use that for turning. When you get turned to the direction you want, turn back down. I like that it can catch fire, like I can overheat the engine. I feel like the Cyclops does so many things right. It does some things wrong. Like, I feel like there's room for a lot more complexity that could be in here. The ability for it to flood, for me to have to seal compartments, for it to have different engines that could be built. Like, what if I want a nuclear reactor? Make a nuclear submarine. But then I run the risk of, like, damage causing it to flood the place with radiation and me having to don the lead-proof suit to fix it. We've proven that we can do that programmatically. It's already got radiation in the game. You know, there's just different things that could have been done, and I feel like the Cyclops could have been expanded on, but I know it's unlikely that the Cyclops will be returning in future games because so many people disliked it. They felt it was slow, sluggish, and they didn't... They wanted something bigger and faster and stronger, whereas for me, I like that each vehicle fills its own niche and has its own differences. I think the heads-up display is outstanding, but I would have loved to have a few more things, like, you know, push a button and bring up a diagnostic screen. Here's a list of your ship systems. You know, which ones are damaged, because I would have loved to have seen different damage effects. As it is, each impact just adds up hull damage outside, and causes water particles to look like the ship is flooding, but it never floods. I've gotten the health bar down to 10% and it never floods. You know, just kind of, I find that a little bit sad. It seemed like a lot more could have been done. Don't scan that, it will just pick it up and you lose the glass you used to make it. I feel like so much could have been done, but the Cyclops is basically a escort slash carrier. It's a small scale carrier. All in all, it's an outstanding vehicle, and it's got so many things it can do, but it just didn't meet what a lot of people expected from it. Also, in terms of the decoy launcher, because creatures they're not persistent in their attacks and they don't do different things, like, say the Ghost Leviathan coils around the ship and it will not stop until you either A, get out of the ship, stasis it, hit it, attack it, do something to dissuade it, or you launch a decoy and then it lets go and chases it. Make the decoys more useful. Because I've yet to have to make one. I keep thinking about making one because, oh, that would be neat, but then I remember, you know, when am I going to need it? I've got this nice button here, I can fire them from up here, but it never becomes needed. Another thing I've mentioned before is, you know, give me different options with the sonar. Have it display topography on here. Have it do something to justify the amount of power it drains. All in all, I would love to see more unique vehicles and concepts like this. I adore the idea of a ship that's large enough to walk around in and build stuff in and do stuff in and use as a mobile base. And the Cyclops does this beautifully. It just doesn't... There's, you know, a few things that aren't quite polished about it. You know, maybe offer a smaller scale Cyclops that it's a one-person Cyclops with no docking bay, but it's faster like people want, but still have the option of the bigger one. Have options for different modular pieces. You know, even if it's only 3 pieces and you have 3 options, you've given me I think 27 different... Sorry, I'm used to doing this with a calculator. 3 and 3, that'd be 9 different ones. So then, yeah, it'd be 27 different potential combinations, just with three cockpits, 3 bodies, and 3 engines. You'd give me 27 different Cyclopses I could build. And yes, I know not all of them are always going to be useful, and don't make variety just for the sake of variety. A lot of games have been running into that with procedural generation. They say, oh, we can make 10 trillion different of insert, but is it meaningful? Borderlands did it by adding stats to them to make them, they look unique, they have stats that make them unique, then they have manufacturers that further make them unique, and it hit on a combination genre nobody had really done a lot with before that I know of, and it took off. But variety for the sake of variety can be a bad thing, because if you can make 10,000 different versions of a desert but they all feel exactly the same, then you've got one desert with different color schemes. Sometimes No Man's Sky has fought with that particular issue, where variety for the sake of variety can be bad. Starbound had a rough start where this was a problem, where variety for the sake of variety, but it didn't... Every planet felt so chaotic that it was just a variety of chaos. Everything felt the same because it was all different. But at the base argument, I would like to have seen more customizations available for the Cyclops and Prawn Suit. I feel like the Prawn Suit, if you had added the sprint function to the Prawn Suit, I'd give it a 9 out of 10. Seamoth, 10 out of 10. And Cyclops, as for what it is, I'd give it an 8 out of 10. But as for what it could be, a 5 or a 6 out of 10, just because there's so much more that could be done. But as it is, it functions very well in its role. And its role is not to be fast and maneuverable. Its role is to be a carrier. All in all, I highly, highly adore this game. I'm so glad I finally, took the time to play it. Somehow,
Welcome aboard, Captain.
somewhere along the way, I convinced myself that it was just Space Engineers but underwater, and since I played Space Engineers so much, I never got around to playing it. So when I found out that it was actually a single-player game with a plot and, all these things to do, survival, I actually took the time to try it, and I'm very thankful I did. I love this game. It is one of my favorites, but I do see things that needed to be polished. Little fine-tuned details that just never got touched up. It seems like they stopped just shy of the polishing phase. I also love the cuddlefish, but I still haven't figured out how. Supposedly you can play with it and train it, and when you get on the Neptune it even says goodbye. We're never doing that again though, because we're not leaving, we're living here. This is home. We will stay here forever. Also, there's apparently 5 cuddlefish eggs in the game, so I want 5 of them now. But they will not breed. Like, you can't just keep making more. There's limits. Normally, if you put 2 of the same fish in an aquarium, they will breed up to the limit of the aquarium. But at the end, in the end, I love this game. I highly recommend it. It's on Steam and Epic Games. I got my copy for free on Epic Games because Epic Games keeps giving away free games, and that happened. Also like that you can lay down and sleep. Just a nice little detail. I highly recommend it. If you are interested in survival, in building, in exploring oceans, and what have you, it's a glorious and beautiful game. I like that they take on a white color when I'm in here because of the glass. The brine pools. It does have room for polishing, and I think it has room for expansion, and there is a sequel to this, Subnautica Below Zero. I have not looked into it, it is still in development. I have been told, regrettably by a friend, that the Cyclops isn't in it, or is not yet. We don't, it's still in development, so here's hoping. But I have high hopes for it, and I hope that they have improved upon the formula. But as it is, like I said, this is an outstanding game. I see so many things that could be built onto it to make it an even more outstanding game, but as it is, it's a great game. I love it. Thank you again for listening if you've put up with all of this rambling, but this has kind of been my attempt at a review of Subnautica. It's a beautiful game. It's got some rough edges. The only game-breaking bug I've found is when the game decides not to continue rendering land, save, quit, and load back in, and that fixes it. But overall, I'm not really good at numerical measurements. I'd just say give it a 10 out of 10. Or, give it a 9 out of 10 because there is still room to grow. I adore it. I hope you've enjoyed watching. This has been the first time I've tried to actually let's play a game of this variety because of just how much time I can sink into these things. So I'm still learning how to break it down and just do certain episodic things while doing a lot off camera. Thank you for watching. As always, I appreciate feedback. In the description, there's a link to the Discord channel, my Twitter, my Patreon if you want to support the channel. You're more than happy to. Thank you if you do. If not, no pressure. Thank you for watching. This concludes Suladan Plays Subnautica. I would love to play Below Zero. Maybe I'll get a copy in the future. We'll see. Probably going to let it get a little more development, but we'll see. In any case, I'm going to go ahead and pause here, and I will see you on the next game. Thank you for watching.